Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U. And today we're going to be going through the 5 missing skills that give you creative power. Now, this is incredibly important. Uh, Being able to create at any time, being able to create even when somebody has given you a hard time and that kind of thing is really important. So we'll start with those 5 missing creative skills. Uh, Once you understand these, you can start working on them immediately. I'll give you some strategies and that kind of thing, and then I'll give you a solution to be able to master them. We'll go to the value of taking notes well. And taking notes basically means the producer is asking you to make changes. And being able to do that well is what keeps you in the industry. It's what keeps producers coming back to you over and over and over again. Incredibly important skill set. Then from there, then I'll do a quick demo about how to take or showing you a process for taking notes from producers that I think you'll really like. And then we'll talk about the upcoming live class. This is one that we're doing live. I'm going to be on Zoom with you every single week during this particular class. I'm doing that one time only. So if you want to be able to get your questions answered, if you want to be able to make sure that you absolutely master the process, this is the time. So let's jump into it. First, let's start with your vision. Most likely, part of your vision is success as a screenwriter. So, but what kind of success do you want? And I've got some ideas here I'll just put up, but start thinking, what kind of success do you want? Because the more in touch with your vision you are, the more likely you're going to make it happen. So, success as a screenwriter, you might want to win some of the big contests. We've had writers who have gone through the program I'm going to talk about today that have won every major contest out there. We've had people win Nickel, we've had people win Final Draft, Page, all the other big ones. Uh, it might be about getting movies and TV series produced, which my hope is that's where you are. It's like that's why we write, right? So if you don't have that in your vision, absolutely make sure you put that in there. Start imagining and visualizing it every day. From there, from a creative perspective, what's your vision for your creativity as a writer? And this may just sound obvious, but I've talked with a lot of people who spend a lot of time editing and they're not thinking about who they really are or who they could become. Part of it, of course, probably is about loving writing and the creative process. And there's a difference, again, between editing and what these two are about. But it also, hopefully, one of your creative visions is that people love and remember your movies and your TV series. That's where we're going. It's like it would be nice for you to be able to meet people in 15 years and they're still talking about how much they loved your movie. And then it's about working with producers, agents, and managers. So when you're thinking about your vision, this is part of it. And let me say something, and I'm not putting anybody down, but you'll see people out there who say all kinds of bad things about working with producers, agents, and managers. Uh, while some of the things they say may be true about certain ones, what I can tell you is I know lots of producers, I know lots of agents, lots of managers, and many of them, some of them I worked with at different times, but many of them I think are really good people. So part of making sure that your vision actually brings you what you want is to start to identify what do you want having to do with these players in the industry, right? And it's like my guess is you want to have an amazing reputation. Uh, you want to be in demand. There's a huge difference between a writer who's in demand and is constantly being brought in for meetings and people are wanting to work with them and going out of their way to bring them projects and that kind of thing. This is incredibly valuable. And very likely you want to be highly paid, which I think every one of those is valuable. I'd say the other one is that you have the kind of relationships with these people that make your life better, right? You keep the people in your life, the producers, agents, and managers that make you a better writer and a better human being. So now, knowing that and looking at and thinking about that, now let's just talk about some, I'd say, some fairly advanced processes. So first one is the ability to take notes in an empowered way. And I'll give you the opposite of that. Every time you hear somebody say something about don't make changes that producers want you to make or something like that, please know the first thing that happens in that situation is you get fired. Even if it's your own script, you get fired. So don't listen to that. But the second thing is know that the person that you're talking to is damaged in some way. They've got some kind of problem. There's something bad happened to them or something, or they listened to someone who something bad happened to, and they didn't figure this out. They didn't learn this process. Taking notes is a huge part of your success. So how it shows up, the producer, agent, manager, whoever it is, ask for some changes. Now, keep this in mind. Before you ever got to that producer, agent, or manager, you likely got feedback from 3 or 4 writers on the script. If you have a writing group, you might have gotten feedback from them. You may have gone out and gotten coverage and received feedback there. And each time you got feedback, you went in and changed something. You elevated some things, right? So it's like it's a strange thing to think that you would do that with those people and then exclude the people that are going to make you the most successful in the industry. So when they start asking you for changes, their purpose, if you look at this, an agent, a manager, their purpose is to be able to sell the script. With a producer, it's to be able to get it produced. All of those are valuable to you. So I'm just giving you a safety tip here. Don't put yourself back on the sidelines by just doing a knee-jerk reaction of refusing. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to do every single thing they say. Just want you to know that. So what's missing for most people, and especially the people who are telling you not to take notes, what's missing is a built-in process for interacting with producers that has you feel confident and creative. This, in my opinion, is incredibly important. We've had so many writers who have gotten really good at the processes that we're going to be talking about today. And because of that, producers love them, and the writer is the best in the room at dealing with this notes-taking process. They're not a victim. They're not somebody who is like sad that the producer wants to make change. They've actually embraced it, and they're a star at it. And that's where you want to be. The real problem for people who aren't comfortable with this and have never been through it is it kind of points to internal fears that as to whether you're good enough or not. And in real life, I'm going to tell you, producers aren't giving you notes because they think you're not good enough. They're giving you notes so that you can make whatever's on the page something that will get produced, right? Most of the time that I see notes, the producer is just trying to figure out how can they get funding, how can they sell this, how can they get an actor, how can they get a director, right? Those kinds of things. And that's why they're asking you to make the change. So don't go into the fight, flight, and freeze reaction. Instead, it's about looking at the solutions. So first, separate the project from who you are as a creative being. You may have written it one way, and when they ask you to write it a different way, once you get into that, you may love it. if you just allow yourself to be this instead of fighting against the notes. They're talking about the project. They're not talking about who you are or your ability to create. And by the way, I'll just say this just to be clear. I haven't seen very many producers in this industry that I would say are abusive. No matter what the media says and that kind of thing. What I have seen is, again, they want to get the project made. If somebody does start saying abusive things to you, either have a meeting with them and talk about it, or, find a way to exit. Solution number 2, use this note-taking process to your advantage. And I think there's 2 parts of this. Look at it from, oh, wow, I have somebody who's giving me free consulting on my script, and they're helping me elevate the script. Wow, I love that idea. Let me go back and see how I can do it, right? Just get into that. And then the other part is, as you work with producers, agents, and managers, you're going to keep elevating who you are as a writer. So every notes-taking experience gives you these moments to make the script better and to make you a better writer. Overall, if your vision in the future is that you are going to be an incredible writer that everybody in this industry loves, taking notes is one of the best ways to get there. Now, let's go to the next step. The ability to recover. And this is the other one that's just so important. It's like, if something happens they catch you off guard or something like that. And let me actually just show you. Here's how it shows up. You get blindsided by feedback or notes where the producer's requesting that you change something that you never thought of. It's like, what? That's my lead character. I've been living with that character for the last year, and now they're wanting you to change it so it fits a particular actor or something. Just know this. First thing to know is, if it ends up being a note that you're going to follow, you may have a conversation with them and it may be something different. But if it ends up being a note you're going to follow, somewhere in there, you're going to step over to the side of saying, okay, let me be creative. Let me find the best possible way to do this. And you never know, you might end up loving it even more than what you originally wrote, right? If you've ever had one draft that you went, wow, it's amazing. And then suddenly, while you're in the shower or going for a walk, you have this huge breakthrough. And it's like, oh my God, that's what the story is about, right? Once you make those changes, you end up loving it. So sometimes all it's about is, if you get blindsided, you just need to step back and take a break, relax. What's usually missing is an emotional frame that naturally leads to recovery, right? And what that basically means, is the recovery means you are back to being fully creative, fully functional, feeling good about yourself, those kinds of things. You need an emotional frame for that. So the real problem, again, if you were blindsided, again, it causes the fight, flight, or freeze reaction. If you see yourself going into that, I had one of these problems about a week ago where that happened. And I was like, wow, I'm not responding well. Hang on. And I took about a minute and recovered, and then came back and had the conversation, and it was a whole different thing. If you find yourself going down a negative spiral, there's a difference. This right here is usually you're reacting immediately. But if you go down a negative spiral, that's where maybe the notes come in and you look at it and you go, oh, wow, what a mistake I made. Oh my God. And then you start questioning whether you can write well. And, and slowly but surely it gets down to, am I an okay human being? Do I deserve to live kind of thing? If if you find yourself going down a negative spiral and saying a lot of negative things to yourself, if you start to feel really emotionally crushed, uh, that's not a good thing. So you want to exit in that moment. So first, don't go down a painful spiral. Interrupt that negative self-talk as fast as you can. And this might be you standing up physically. It might be you asking for a break and saying, can I come back? It might be you saying, let me think about this overnight and I'll get back to you. Those kinds of things are okay when you're in the midst of it. But just don't go down this path. Don't let it happen. And that's within your control. You just recognize it and interrupt it as quickly as possible. Then empower yourself and embrace the positive side of the process. Uh, Keep this in mind. The producer may give you some kind of notes that popped into their head without thinking about it very much. And today it may look like a great idea to them. You may come back tomorrow and say, here, let me just show you how I thought I might do that. And they may change their mind, right? So empower yourself and just embrace the positive side. Either you'll love it at some point or they'll realize it's not the right thing. Either way, you're going to get a chance to show yourself as a pro by dealing with it well. Third, take on this perspective. This moment is part of making you a great writer. And it's either part of making you a great writer because you're going to go, oh my God, I could write it that way. And now you do it and it's better. Or it's part of making you a great writer because you haven't been up against this situation before. And now whatever happens, you'll at least have this experience to be able to draw on in the future. You'll go back, you'll find solutions, you'll get better. So whatever, it doesn't matter whether it's a great moment or a terrible moment, it's all part of making you a great writer. If you take that perspective, every meeting you have, you come out of it better. You come out of it stronger. And every meeting is another step towards you being A-list, right? Which is why we're having a more advanced conversation right now. So, and then number 3, the ability to rethink and to recreate. This goes with what we were just talking about, but this is now the actual, how do you do that? How do you sit there when you've worked with this character for 6 months and they're telling you, there's a movie coming out next week and it has a character almost identical to this. So suddenly we have to rethink or recreate, and whether if what you want to do is get your movie made, I'm sure you're going to be willing to do that, but it's important that you have the process, right? So how this shows up, you have written something and it feels stuck that way. It's like, no, that's the way it's supposed to be. I can remember at one point early in my writing, I had a conversation with a producer and he says, we really have to change. It was like almost an entire act. It was a whole sequence of scenes. He says, we really have to change those. He says, I can't move forward with this way. And I remember saying to him, but that's the only way to write it. And he looked up at me with this kind of stunned look and he went, you're a writer and there's only one way to write something? Now, I was a little triggered at that point. But I remember saying, well, let me think about it. I'll get back to you. And I walked outside and those words just kept playing in my mind. You're a writer and you think there's only one way to write something. uh, so it took me a day or two to recover, and I rewrote it. I rethought it. Uh, but let's just go through this. After that, most people just kind of go to editing the words. When they're stuck, it's like you may have things like this. I have things where I've written on draft 2, it was a certain way, and it stayed exactly that way all the way through every draft I did. If the producer questions that, it's like, wow, it feels like that's the foundation of this script. So that, by the way, what that meant was I was just editing the words from that point. Draft 2, everything after that, I didn't change any major things at all. What it really needed was a complete rethink. And you got to be good at that. So what's missing? The experience of knowing that anything can be created 10 to 50 different ways. We did this with a group. I had a test group we did this with, and it's, by the way, it's part of what's in this class that we teach. I took a test group. I gave them a scene. I said, here's the scene. It starts here. It ends there. It's scene arc. Here are the 2 main characters in it. Here's the big thing that happens. And I just said, with that, I gave character traits with the characters. I said, with that, write it. And then they posted it. We had at least in that group, I can't remember how many people there were. There were like 40 or some odd people. We had at least 30 completely different scenes that were written. That same scene, the way I presented it, they didn't change anything in it. They just wrote their version of it. 30 different ways that scene could be written. And it's like, for most of the people there, that was a huge breakthrough. Back when I said there's only one way to write that, it's like, now I know, you know what, there's 10 to 50 different ways. And once you have a deep internal experience of that, once you absolutely know that you can write any scene at least 10 different ways, that changes what's possible for you as a writer. So the real problem is, especially once something's gotten stuck that way, is to think outside the box. That's the real problem. Solution: intentionally practice writing the same way in radically different ways, or the same thing in radically different ways. So important. You should be able to look at a scene and say, well, I wrote it this way. Now, how many other ways could I write it? Not how many ways could I edit it. How many ways could I have that scene be completely different than the first version? And you should be able to easily come up with at least 10. And that's something you just practice over and over and over. And when you do that, you become stronger and stronger and stronger as a writer. I had a producer at one point who I had never met. I'm doing a live set of interviews in front of about 50 writers. And he comes in and sits down and he says, Hal Croasmun, he says, I've always been wanting to meet you. And I was like, really? I mean, I know there are a lot of producers that know me, but nobody sits down and says that. I didn't say that to him. I said, really? And that's because, and he goes, I'm working with 4 of your writers and they are incredible. And I was like, okay, cool. I'd love to hear about it. What's incredible about them? And then he basically said this. He says, anything I ask them to do, they can do. He said, if we look at scenes and they need to be changed, or characters or acts or anything like that, they are completely willing and open to rethinking it, right? They've got this down, rethinking and recreating. And that makes a huge difference in who you are as a writer in this industry. Number 4. The ability to create when you think it isn't possible. Now, if you, it really, it takes a minute to just understand that. If you're convinced there's no other way to do this, just no other way to do this, then you really need to do that. You need to create it in a different way so that this becomes part of who you are. Even if you go, wow, I can't even figure this out. I was in a meeting. We took a writer to meet a producer. The writer pitched something to the producer. The producer said, I really like that if you just change this one thing, which was the entire ending. And then the producer said, I'll read that script and I'll work with you, but I need to know up front that you will make that change. And we sat there and talked about it for about 10 minutes, and then he said he had to go. So the writer and I walked out to her car and we stood next to it. We're both looking into the sky, and she goes, do you have any idea how we're going to do this? And I said, not yet. And she goes, me either. So we sat there talking for about 5 minutes. And at the end of 5 minutes, we were both committed to it. We didn't think it was possible. We didn't think it would make sense. At the end of 5 minutes, we had three different ways we could go. She went to her home. I went to mine. She called me up the next morning and she had another way and I had another way. We discussed them, picked the best, took it back to him. And she got the job. Now, by the way, one of the things he said later on was he said that was a test. He really wanted that ending, but he said that was a test to see who she was as a writer and what was really possible when it came to working with her. And he said she passed it with flying colors. So let's look at this one. So how it shows up, you're asked to solve a problem or create things that you have never even considered. Massive confusion because you basically have to create to survive in that situation. Uh, and it's like this actually happens from time to time in this industry. No matter how good it is, no matter how amazing it is, no matter how many people said yes to it, somebody at the top, somebody in marketing, somebody is going to ask you to change something that you don't think the story can live without. And if you can do it, they're going to respect and admire you from now on. One of the writers I interviewed, a guy named Alan Loeb, I interviewed him twice. The first time it was a kind of a general interview. The second time I had heard a podcast he was on or something, a recording someplace where he said that that sometimes producers and studios especially ask him to do completely crazy things. So I'm in the midst of the interview the second time, and I said, "Hey, I heard you say this. Let me ask you." I said, "Does that happen very often?" And he goes, "From time to time." And I said, "So how do you feel about that?" And his response was, "Great." And everybody laughed. And I was like, "No, really. How do you feel about that?" Because I'm thinking he's going to tell me the truth, right? And he said, "I feel great because that's where I shine. When everybody else thinks I can't do it, that's where I come back as a hero." And he said, from that point on, they'll work with me anytime I'm available. And it's like, yeah. And he was getting paid over $1 million a movie at that point. So what's missing? It's a long-term confidence thing. If it's like if you just recognize this right here, it isn't possible. If you recognize, well, that might be true in this moment, but by the time I've walked home, by the time I've parked my car, by the time I wake up tomorrow morning, I might solve it. Right? And for any of you who do that, where the night before you say, okay, I'm going to solve this tomorrow morning, I do that almost every day on something I'm working on. 80% of the time I wake up in the morning and it's there. It's just, I recognize the night before I can't figure it out. It's the thing I've been working on all day and it's not working. Sometimes just allowing yourself to go into an unconscious state and sleep on it, knowing that you can solve it, changes things. So the real problem, again, it's like the momentary confusion is actually dictating your creative process when you think it isn't possible. Yeah, it's because, I mean, we all know it's like if you say it isn't possible to write it a certain way or something like that, they're going to go get another writer who will say it is possible. And you just got fired and somebody else is butchering your script. Don't let that happen to you ever. That's when I have coached people through that particular process, it's like, wow, it's so painful to get fired just because you didn't come up with one idea, or because you can't figure out how to solve the thing they want to solve. You can do it. It's just a matter of recognizing in the long term, you're going to get it. You may need to give yourself some space. You may need to ask for a couple of days. You may need to brainstorm 10 different ways, or go to your writers group and brainstorm with them. There's lots of ways to do it. So the solution is to create a vision of your success and to use a more advanced creative process. And I really do think this is important. So in the present, and this is what's going on here. In the present, you have an unsolvable problem, but if you can hold that future that you generated this amazing solution, it'll happen for you. And here's why I say it'll happen for you, because you're a creative person. That's why you're here, right? You're a creative person. And so just keep this in mind. If you're saying it's an unsolvable problem now, and you're telling your creative mind, it'll always be an unsolvable problem. Nobody can solve this. If you're doing that kind of stuff, you're essentially giving your creative mind instructions not to solve it. So don't do that, right? Just, again, recognize, even if you think this in the moment, be logical about it. Tomorrow you may solve it. So, create a future where you have solved it in an amazing way, where you believe in yourself, and where any producer who looks at it will go, wow. Bigger solution, build long-term confidence in your own creative abilities so that this isn't even a thought process. It's just like they ask you to do something, and you look and you go, wow, no answer right now. It'll come to me. And you walk out of the meeting and say, let me go process that a little bit. I'll get back to you. And by the way, they're okay with that. All the producers I know who work with writers understand that you go through creative processes. So they're okay with you not having the answer now and solving it later. So just do it. Build the long-term confidence in your own creative abilities. Sometimes that requires better processes. Sometimes that requires thinking outside the box. Sometimes that requires you to just believe in yourself and have confidence. You can do that. And number 5, the ability to double the quality of your best writing. Let me tell you where this came from. And this was the basis of the entire thing I'm about to talk with you about, to show you today. We've got a class that this is what started it. A guy called me up, his name was Richard, and he said, he's one of our writers. He said, Hal, I just had my script optioned. And I was like, congratulations, Richard. Excellent. Well done. It was the first time he'd never had a script option before. I said, I'm so happy for you. And he goes, but there's a problem. And I said, what's that? He said, the producer loved the concept, loved the characters, loved the pitch. He just said, we just need to double the quality of the writing. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. He goes, no, it's not interesting. He says, I can't do it. Now, if you look back to the last one, he was living in that it's impossible thing. And I said, no, let me think about it, Richard. And he goes, what am I supposed to do? And I said, I don't know. I don't have a solution right now. Let me think about it for a couple of days. I'll come back to you. I said, I haven't thought of that before. How does somebody take their best writing and double the quality, right? This is about 8 years ago or so. Uh, and so I spent the next 2, 3 days thinking about it. And it's like, what would the process be? What would the whole psychological thing be? What kind of internal change would a writer need to make to be able to naturally do this? Right? So let me give you this, but I'll tell you what it really is in just a minute here. First, how it shows up. For Richard, that was a huge shock. He had a deal, and it was all based on could he double the quality of the writing in the scenes. For most people, it's like it'll show up if they lose a contest or if they get turned down by a producer or an agent or a manager. And it's like, when they pitched it to the producer, agent, or manager, the producer requested the script. But then when they read the writing, they turned it down. It's like, okay, that's one of the times when you need this. You need to be able to double the quality of your best writing. So for most people, this is a psychological bind, and that's what it was for Richard, right? He kept saying over and over, that's the best I can do. How could I possibly be twice as good? And I said, I know, it is a good question. And he kept saying, it's not a question. I can't do it. And I was like, just please hold on. Just let me go through the process and see what I can come up with. So what was missing was he just didn't have the steps to solve that bind. And he also had gotten stuck in the impossible thinking. So the solution is just to have a specific process for this, because this thing, it's not like you're going to have a lot of producers who say, can you double the quality? What they will really say is, sorry, it's not for me. And it's like, okay, that means something's there. But having this process, the ability to double the quality, that is self-directed, that you have control of. That's not about getting somebody else to give you the answers. Having that ability changes things for you. So it's important, and it's worth thinking about and looking into. And I'll give you some solutions on that in just a moment. So here's the other one. This is my bonus on this. Master taking notes. We talked a little bit about taking notes on them before. I'm doing something pretty special on this. So producer notes, these are the changes that they're asking you to make, right? And they're doing it for a reason. Again, if you run into a producer who just wants to wordsmith and edit your script, that's very rare. Most of the time they're looking at it and they're going, in order to fund this, we need X, or we need to lower the budget, so we need to cut some pages, or the lead character needs to be changed in order to go out to the actresses I have in mind, or something like that. Their notes have a purpose that's about getting your movie made. So it is worth knowing what to do. But mastering notes means, first, when they test you, you get the job. And the easiest way for a producer to test you is just to give you some notes that are difficult. If you are a master at it, you will come through, they will be blown away by how you dealt with it and how you dealt with them and how you dealt with your creative process, right? And you get hired. I have actually, we've had lots of writers that I've been in the meeting when the producer was doing this and watched the writer do an incredible job and get the job. I'll say on the other side, early on, when I first started producing, the first 3 writers I brought in, I watched them fail this test, and it was as much my fault as it was theirs. I didn't understand it. I was just like, yeah, I don't know. We'll figure it out, right? And then that didn't happen in the room, and the writer didn't handle it well, or I didn't handle it well, and it was, they lost the job. So that was part of when I started saying, you know what, we need to be masters at this. We need to know what we're doing. Here's the second value. You'll be better at the process than the producers are. And that makes it worth mastering it. Because if you're in that room and the producer, whether they're trying to test you or whether they really do have a concern about the script, or they really do have a problem getting it produced, or whatever it is, if you're better at the process than them, first thing is you're going to be bringing solutions that surprise them. And that makes you a star. Second thing on that is at no point are you going to feel uncomfortable, because you're actually the one who knows what you're doing. And that makes a difference. And of course, it impresses them. Value number 3 is more of your scripts are going to be turned into movies and TV series. And that's because you're not adding that one extra obstacle that most writers add, which is if the producer says, I can produce this if you make these changes. Go back to Richard. If you double the quality of the writing, that's a really big ask. But if he did that, which by the way, he did. He went through the first version of this program. He rewrote that script using it, went back to the producer with it about 35 days later, and the producer read it and went, wow. And they moved forward with the deal. But I had to get Richard over that impossible thinking in order to do that. But more of your scripts are going to get turned into movies because there's not an obstruction with the script. The script, you can make any changes they need. You can do whatever it takes to get it turned into a movie or a TV series. And let me just, So value number 4, you're going to gain a reputation as a writer who's incredibly valuable to producers. And let's say it a different way. If we go back to Alan Loeb, he gained a reputation as somebody who was an absolute star. He could make anything work in a script. And he says, when they give me the most ridiculous things, he said, I'll ask them a couple of questions. If they survive those questions, then my job is to do it in a way that is better than they could imagine. And he said, when that happens, they're in awe of me. So that gives you that kind of reputation. If you can do that, people are going to be astounded by who you are and what's possible. So let me take this a step further here. I want to do a quick demo and show you something. So just a second. There. So just take a look at this. This is one of the processes that we're using to be able to master taking notes. So this isn't, while I'm using AI on this, I'm not using AI to change my script or any of that kind of thing. This is, by the way, this is a scene that I wrote right here. So it's the opening scene to a script. I'm just bringing it in to show it to you. What we're doing here is we're using this, and it'll actually be in our system. We are using this as a tool for you to master taking notes. So watch this. So it went through my scene. It first says, here are the things that I did well, because a producer will usually say that. I really love your characters, and I especially love this one. However, I'm looking at the journey, and I'd like you to make this one change, right? So they'll tell you what they liked first, usually, and then they'll go into the big change. So this says, this is visually a visually cinematic intro. Yeah, it's engaging tone and humor. They like that. It has a strong twist reveal. There's the things it liked. Now it's going to give me producer notes. So, and these notes, I've asked it to give 3. They each take on a very specific purpose. I've asked it to give us notes that will make the script better, and at least one that's a little crazy that forces us to think outside the box. right? So you won't know what any of these mean, but it's like it wants me to express Amelia's inner wound sooner and sharper. First, I absolutely agree with that. That makes total sense to me based on this scene. It wants me to add a twist that makes her doubt herself. That's not in there, and it is something I would consider. And it wants me to heighten the hope and fear by changing the action flow. This particular scene I have written and rewritten 7 times. The action flow in the scene has been exactly the same for the last 5 times. So now I'm going to have to, if I was going to follow these notes, I'm going to have to think outside the box. Now, why I'm showing you this is this. Let's pretend for a moment that you're going to meet with a producer a week from now. You've got 1 week, and you know the producer is going to give you notes, and you've already heard that the producer bases their decision on how well you do with those notes. Let me ask you, what if you could practice the note-taking process to the point where you are just a star at it? That, you know, you're like Alan Loeb. You're like one of these people that anything they give you, you can rethink it pretty much on the spot, but you also could go home, rethink it, come back with something that surprises them because it's so good. That's what we're doing here. What we're doing here is I took a scene that I wrote, and I'm using it to look and see what did I do well and what might the producer notes be that I can prepare for in advance, that I can rethink, that I can play this game where I say, okay, let me just I'm going to do a complete rewrite on the scene based on this. Then I'm going to do a completely different version based on that, and then a completely different version based on that. Now, if you can do that, what's going to happen is any producer who gives you notes is going to have that moment where they go, oh my God, this writer's incredible. I love how she does this, right? It's like, oh my God, I gave her an idea. She came back with something that blew me away. When they have that experience, they'll work with you from now on. And they'll pay you more money on the next deal and more money on the one after that. And sooner or later, you're going to be there. So that's what this whole thing is about. Now, let me take it a step further. These are the things we've talked about today. Just simply the ability to take notes in an empowered way, the ability to recover, the ability to rethink or recreate, the ability to create when you think it isn't possible, the ability to double the quality of your best writing, and the bonus one, mastering taking notes. So that's what this program is that I'm about to talk with you about. And we're only doing it live, where I'm going to be available to answer your questions 1 time. So stay with me just for a moment. Let me walk you through this to give you a chance on this. The live classes that we have done have made a significant difference for people. So here's what the program is. Again, what if you could double the quality of your best writing? The writers who've gone through this program, we have had winners at Nickel Fellowship, the #1 contest and the #1 most respected contest in this industry. We've had grand prizes at Page, first place, multiple first place at Final Draft Big Break Contest. We've had over 100 writers who have gone through this program land managers because you have the skills to work with them as they're giving you feedback and improving scripts. We've had over 300 writers who have gone through this program who have made deals with producers. This particular program wasn't first, the earlier versions of it weren't available to the public at all. We did it in the alumni only. We opened it up one time about a year ago, and we did one, but it wasn't live. This one's different. So this is it's a proprietary process that is something that only Screenwriting U has. It took us a while to design it. And a couple of other things you need to know about it. It's a 10-week class. So the purpose of this class is to change what's possible for you as a writer from this point on. In it, you're going to master the process of doubling the quality of your best writing. This is incredibly important. And it takes a little bit of work, but it's worth it and it's fun. Second, you're going to increase your creativity when it comes to writing scenes. This is the big thing we're focused on in this class. And just to be clear, a lot of people are like, well, I work with characters, or I work with structure, or, I'm better at this or better at that. Totally fine. Good. Excellent. You're there. Now, how good are you at writing scenes that blow producers away? And how good are you at taking feedback on scenes and then coming back and making them twice as good? So you have 50 to 80 scenes in every script you write. That means 50 to 80 times you have the chance to impress the producers. And then this thing about mastering taking notes. So you saw the process that I was just talking about. That's the one that we'll be using as you go through this. Mastering taking notes, I say it basically takes any deal that you ever make with a producer, and it gives you more deals because of that. The writers that I know who are great at this have producers coming back to them again and again and again and again. The one writer that was the best I ever saw at this, I got her 3 deals with producers. And I'm not doing that right now, but I'm just telling you, she was so good. I knew no matter what changes they wanted, she was going to blow them away. She's had 4 movies made since then. So it makes a huge difference in your chance of success. The price on the class, again, it's 10-week. The price is $299. I'm going to give you a special. It starts on Monday, May 5th. That gives you a little bit of time to work with whatever script you're working with right now. There's parts of this where you actually do work with your script, but there's parts of this where we're just working with the process to get it to where you can master it. So just know that. The special, I'll talk about that in just a second. Just want you to know this. One time only. This is the only time we're doing this, the May 5th class. We're not doing it in any of the other classes. It's one time only. I am doing it simply to get the recordings. You'll have 10 live meetings with me. This is the whole group, 10 live meetings. You'll get a chance to learn from the skills that we're working with, the process, the slides, all of that kind of thing, but it's going to be so much better here. And you'll also get a chance to learn from the other writers, the questions they ask and all of that, because we'll be doing Q&A at the end of every one of these live meetings so that you master this skill set, so that you know it inside and out. It's a lot of times people learn something for a moment, and then when they get in front of producers, they can't do it because, well, it's not part of who they are. Our objective here is to make sure it's part of who you are, which is why everything in this program happens, you'll see. And then you'll get AI feedback on every assignment. And this is inside our system. We spent a lot of money creating an AI feedback system that makes it easy for you. You write whatever the scene is, or you do whatever the assignment is, and the moment you're done with it, what usually happens for people is they go, okay, I like that. Could it be better? So what happens in this situation is you immediately upload it to our AI in that case, and this is a totally safe situation. Nobody's going to see it. No system out there is going to train on it, not even ours. We have it designed so it's completely safe for you. You load it up, which takes about 5 seconds. You click return. 1 minute later, you have complete feedback on that assignment, so you can improve it right then. This makes a huge difference both in the quality of the writing overall, but it makes an even bigger difference in the quality of who you are as a writer. So here's the link. Write it down. bit.ly, bit.ly. I'll tell you the special in just a second. bit.ly/quality-mastery. Now, here's the special. For the first 10 people, this is the first time we've offered this. We've never offered it before. First 10 get in at $149, which will save, it's half price. It'll save you $151. So, or $150. And you're getting all the stuff that everybody else who's ever taken this class who paid $299 or $199 if they got in on the ultimate special that we did, they didn't get any of this. None of this existed for them at that time. So if what you want to do is to truly become a great writer who not only can survive the producer process, but you thrive in that process, write this link down, put it in your browser where you normally put a web address, click return, and come join us. The first 10 get in at $149. After that, I think it's going to go up to either $179 or $199. On this one, because we're doing the live meetings, I'll continue to raise it until it hits $299. I promise you, this will be something that, as long as you are willing to give it 30 minutes each time and do the assignment for every session, as long as you're willing to do that, this will change your writing and your level of confidence in a huge way. So come join us. I can't wait to work with you. So with that, this is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, wishing you the best, and I'm looking forward to working with you during the Creative Mastery class. Bye-bye, everyone.